I was carrying a laundry basket down the hallway Tuesday afternoon, just after 2 o'clock, when I noticed the door to my bedroom was closed. I stopped walking, just stopped, because that door had not been closed in 42 years, not once. Harold and we never slept with the door closed. He used to say a closed bedroom door in your own home is the first sign that something's gone wrong somewhere. I thought that was just Harold being Harold, but I remembered it standing there in that hallway, holding a basket of his old undershirts that I still washed out of habit, even though he'd been gone for 11 years. I stood there and I listened, and I heard a voice, not my son's voice, not my daughter-in-law Renee's voice, a voice I recognized but had never expected to hear coming from behind that particular door. "Oh, this room gets the best sunlight in the whole house." That was Sylvia, Renee's mother, standing inside my bedroom, mine and Harold's bedroom, talking about the sunlight. "And look at the size of this closet. This is bigger than my whole bathroom back in Phoenix." I stood in that hallway for what felt like a full minute. I didn't knock. I didn't say a word. I just turned around, walked back to the kitchen, set the laundry basket down on the floor, and sat at the table with my hands folded in my lap. That was the moment I understood that something in my own house had changed, and nobody had thought to tell me. If you enjoy listening to real stories, stories about family and pride, and the strange things that happen when people assume you're too old to notice what's being done to you, I want you to subscribe to this channel right now, because I have more of these, and every one of them is true. All right, let me take you back to the beginning. The house is on Clover Hill Road in a small town in Western Virginia. Harold and I bought it in 1983, paid $64,000 for it, which felt like an impossible amount of money at the time. 3 bedrooms, a big kitchen, a wraparound porch that Harold repainted every 4 years without fail. We raised our son Daniel in that house. He learned to ride his bicycle in the driveway. He broke the window above the kitchen sink twice, once with a baseball, once with a rock he claimed was thrown by somebody else. I knew it was him both times. Harold passed in 2013. Heart attack. He was sitting in his chair in the living room watching a football game. He was 68 years old, and he was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I stayed in the house. People asked me why I didn't move somewhere smaller, somewhere easier. I told them this house was the only place I still felt Harold nearby. His tools were still in the garage. His reading glasses were still on the nightstand. I kept them there. Some people probably thought that was strange. I didn't care what people thought. Daniel and Renee lived about 40 minutes away. They visited on holidays, some Sundays. They had one daughter, Aubrey, who was 7 at the time all of this started. Life was normal, quiet, the way I liked it. Then Daniel called me on a Thursday evening in March. He said, "Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Can I come over this weekend?" And the way he said it, I already knew it wasn't good news. He sat at my kitchen table, that same table where he'd done his homework for 12 years, and he told me that the company he'd been working for, a logistics firm, had laid off a significant portion of their staff. Daniel was one of them. He'd been there 9 years. He thought he was secure. He was not. Renee worked part-time at a dental office. It was not enough to cover their rent, their car payments, Aubrey's school, and everything else. They were 3 months behind on their rent already. Their landlord had been patient but was running out of patience. He looked at his hands while he told me this. He didn't look at my face. I asked him what he needed. He said, "We were hoping just for a little while, Mom. We could stay here, just until I find something new. It shouldn't be more than a few months." I didn't hesitate. I said yes, because that's what you do. He was my son. That house had 3 bedrooms. There was more than enough room. And truthfully, I thought it might be nice to have some life back in the house, some noise, Aubrey running through the hallways. They moved in on a Saturday in April with a moving truck and 17 boxes and a dog named Pepper that I had not been informed about until Pepper was already standing on my kitchen floor. I made room. I cleared out the closet in the 2nd bedroom. I bought new towels. I put a little lamp in Aubrey's room. I cooked dinner that first night, roast chicken and green beans and biscuits, and we sat together, and it felt for a moment like it might actually be fine. 6 weeks later, Renee mentioned that her mother was having some difficulties of her own. Sylvia lived in Phoenix, Arizona. She was 71. She had recently, Renee said, been having some health scares. Nothing critical, but concerning enough that Renee didn't feel comfortable with her being so far away. Renee said her mother was lonely, that the apartment in Phoenix had mold problems, that the landlord wouldn't fix them. I listened. I didn't say much. A week after that conversation, Renee said, "Mom, would it be all right if my mother stayed here for a little while, just until we get back on our feet and can find a place? She wouldn't be any trouble." Now that's a sentence that deserves careful attention. Just until we get back on our feet, meaning they had not yet gotten back on their feet, meaning Daniel was still looking for work, meaning the few months I agreed to was quietly becoming something longer, and now there was a new person being added to that arrangement. I should have said something firm right then. I know that now. But I looked at Renee's face, and she looked worried, and I thought about what Harold would have done, and I thought Harold would have said yes. So I said yes. Sylvia arrived on a Wednesday with 4 suitcases and 2 boxes of things she described as just a few personal items that turned out to include a full-size decorative mirror, a bread maker, and a throw rug she immediately placed over my hallway runner without asking. She was polite to my face, very polite, the kind of polite that takes a little effort, if you understand what I mean, like she was always just slightly performing it. The first week was fine. The second week I noticed things. My cast iron skillet was moved to a different cabinet. When I mentioned it, Sylvia said, "Oh, I just reorganized a little. I hope that's okay." She smiled when she said it. I moved the skillet back. 2 days later, it was in the wrong place again. She changed the time on the coffee maker. She started buying a different brand of dish soap without discussing it. Small things, individually meaningless, but they added up. They were adding up every single day. Renee stopped asking for my opinion about meals. They started eating dinner at 7, which is not when I eat dinner. I eat at 5:30. I had eaten at 5:30 for 40 years. I started eating alone in the kitchen before the rest of them sat down, which is not what I wanted, but it felt easier than trying to explain something that shouldn't have needed explaining. Daniel noticed I was quieter than usual. He asked me once if everything was fine. I said everything was fine. He looked relieved and changed the subject, and I understood then that he did not actually want to have that conversation. He wanted me to say I was fine so he didn't have to think about it. I said I was fine. I was not fine. It was Renee who brought it up first. She came to me on a Sunday morning while I was drinking my coffee on the porch. She sat down across from me, and she had that look on her face that I had come to recognize, careful, pre-rehearsed. She said, "Elizabeth, I wanted to talk to you about something, and I hope you'll just hear me out." I said, "All right." She said that Sylvia's back had been bothering her. The guest room where Sylvia was sleeping, the smallest bedroom, which used to be Harold's study, had a bed that was too soft, and Sylvia couldn't sleep well, and her back was suffering. Renee said she'd been thinking about it, and she wondered, just wondered, whether I had ever considered that the room arrangements might make more sense if they were adjusted. I looked at her. She kept going. She said my bedroom, the master bedroom, the one with the bigger closet and the attached bathroom and the window that faced the garden, would be so much better for Sylvia's condition, and I could have the guest room. She said she would buy me a new mattress. She said it so quickly, the part about the new mattress, like she'd practiced it and knew it was the weakest part of what she was saying. I asked her where Daniel was. She said he was inside. I asked him to send him out. He came out a few minutes later and sat beside Renee, and he couldn't quite look at me directly. He looked at the porch railing. He said, "Mom, I think it just makes more sense. That room is better for her health. You know how important that is." I said, "Daniel, that is my bedroom." He said, "I know, Mom, I know, but it's just a room." Just a room. Harold's reading glasses were still on the nightstand in that room. His slippers were still under the edge of the bed because I had never had the strength to move them. His cardigan was on the hook behind the closet door. That was where I had put it the week after the funeral, and it was still there 11 years later, and it was just a room. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I did not raise my voice. I had learned a long time ago that when you're an older woman and you cry or raise your voice in a difficult conversation, people use that as evidence that you're not thinking clearly. I was thinking more clearly in that moment than I had in years. I said, "I'll think about it." They took that as a yes. I don't know why. I said I would think about it. But Renee's shoulders dropped with relief, and Daniel finally looked at me and gave me a small nod like I had agreed to something, and they went back inside. 2 days later, I walked down the hallway, and the door to my bedroom was closed. That Tuesday afternoon, the laundry basket, the sunlight, Sylvia's voice, "I'll think about it," had somehow become, "Yes, of course, take whatever you want." That night, I could not sleep. I was lying in the guest room. The mattress was old and the window faced the neighbor's fence instead of the garden, and I stared at the ceiling and I thought about the deed to the house. I knew exactly where it was, in the second drawer of Harold's old filing cabinet in the garage. I had organized that cabinet myself when Harold died. I knew every document inside it. I thought about what my situation actually was. Daniel and Renee had moved in under the understanding that it was temporary. Sylvia had arrived under the same understanding, but it was now 8 months since Daniel had lost his job. 8 months. He had not found new work yet, and quietly, subtly, without any formal conversation, I had lost my kitchen routine and my dinner time and now my bedroom. And I thought, what happens next? Because I knew what happened next. I had seen it with other women my age. You make one accommodation and then another and then another. People take a little and then a little more, and they always have a reason, and the reason always sounds somewhat reasonable until one day you look around and realize you are a guest in your own home. That was not going to happen. Not to me, not in Harold's house. I got up at 2 in the morning and I went to the kitchen and I made myself a cup of tea and I sat at that table where Daniel had done his homework for 12 years and I thought about what I was going to do. The next morning, I went to the garage and I opened the filing cabinet and I pulled out the deed to the house. The property on Clover Hill Road was in my name only. Harold and I had transferred it to my name alone back in 2009 for estate planning purposes. Our lawyer had suggested it. Daniel did not know this. He had always assumed, I think, that the house was in both names and would simply pass to him when I was gone. Nobody had ever had a direct conversation about it. I sat in the garage for a long time with that document. Then I came back inside, made myself a proper breakfast, and called my friend Dorothy, who had sold her house 2 years ago and knew a good real estate agent. His name was Mr. Patterson, Grayson Patterson. He came to the house on a Thursday morning when Daniel was at a job interview and Renee had taken Sylvia to a doctor's appointment and Aubrey was at school. I showed him the house, the whole house, the big kitchen, the wraparound porch Harold had repainted 4 times, the garden, the garage, the master bedroom with the good sunlight. He told me what the house was worth. The number was significantly higher than I had expected because property values in that area had risen considerably in the last few years. I told him I wanted to sell. I told him I wanted to move to a retirement community I had already looked into, a place called Meadow Creek about 20 minutes away. I had visited it twice already, the second time with Dorothy. It had a garden club and a small library and a screened porch outside each unit, and I had thought it was lovely both times. Mr. Patterson asked about my timeline. I told him I wasn't in a hurry, but I wasn't interested in waiting forever either. He told me he could have an offer within 60 days if we priced it correctly. I told him to proceed. I did not tell Daniel. I did not tell Renee. I did not tell Sylvia. I went about my days the same as before. I made my coffee in the morning. I ate my dinner at 5:30. I watered my garden on the days it didn't rain. I called my lawyer, a woman named Patricia Holt, who I had used for years, and I told her what I was doing, and she helped me understand it all clearly. And I started quietly preparing. I sorted through what I wanted to bring with me. I donated what I didn't need. I packed Harold's things carefully, his reading glasses, his cardigan, his slippers, into a box that I labeled in my own handwriting and set at the back of the closet in the guest room. 42 years in one house, and I packed what truly mattered into 11 boxes. Everything else was just furniture, just objects. The house itself I was done fighting for. Because here is the thing Daniel never understood. I didn't need the house. I needed to be treated like a person inside it. When that stopped being possible, the house stopped being mine in any way that mattered. The deed was just paperwork. What made it mine was 42 years of Sunday mornings and arguments about whose turn it was to clean the gutters, and the smell of Harold's coffee, and the sound of Daniel as a little boy calling for me in the night when he had a bad dream. Those things do not transfer with a property deed. They were already gone. I chose a Sunday because everyone was home on Sundays. Renee made brunch that morning. She had taken over Sunday brunch completely by this point. Eggs and fruit and those pastries she got from the bakery in town. Everyone sat around the dining room table. Aubrey was talking about something that happened at school. Sylvia was pouring juice. Daniel was reading something on his phone. I waited until they were all settled, and then I said, "I have something I'd like to tell everyone." The table got quiet. Aubrey looked at me. Renee put down her fork. I said, "I've sold the house." Nobody moved. I said it again, calmly. "I've accepted an offer on the house. Closing is scheduled for 6 weeks from this Thursday. I've made arrangements to move to Meadow Creek. Most of you know it. It's on Route 9. It's a very nice place. I've already put a deposit down on a unit." Daniel looked like the air had gone out of him. Renee said, "What?" Sylvia said nothing. She set her juice glass down very carefully. Daniel said, Mom, wait. What are you sold the house? When did you, we didn't." He stopped, gathered himself, tried again. "You can't just sell the house. We're living here. You can't do that without telling us." I said, "Daniel, the house is in my name. I can do exactly that." He looked at Renee, and the look on their face told me everything. He had not known the deed was in my name alone. He had assumed. All those years he had simply assumed. He said, "Mom, we don't have anywhere to go." I said, "I know. That's why I'm telling you now, 6 weeks ahead of time, so you have time to make arrangements. That's more notice than I received about my bedroom." Silence. A different kind of silence than before. I looked at Renee. She was staring at the tablecloth. Sylvia had her hands folded in her lap and was looking somewhere near the window. Aubrey didn't fully understand what was happening, but she could feel the weight of it, and she was very still. Daniel said, quietly, "Mom, please." I said, "I love you. I love Aubrey. I have tried my best to make everyone comfortable here, but this has not been a home for me in quite some time, and I am not going to live out whatever years I have left as a visitor in my own house." He said, "We can fix this. We can change things." I said, "I know you believe that." He said, "Just give us a chance to..." I said, "Daniel, I have already signed the papers." He tried for 3 days to convince me to reverse it. He called the real estate agent who told him the contract was legally binding. He called Patricia, my lawyer, who told him the same thing. He came to the guest room door one evening and knocked and sat on the edge of the bed and tried to have the kind of conversation we should have had 8 months ago. He cried a little. He apologized. He said he hadn't realized. He said he got so caught up in his own problems that he hadn't stopped to think about what I was experiencing. I believed him. I want to be clear about that. I believe he was genuinely sorry, but sorry doesn't rewind time. Sorry doesn't give me back the 8 months of eating dinner alone or lying awake in a strange bed in my own house. It doesn't give me back the morning I stood in the hallway with a laundry basket, listening to someone else decide my bedroom had good sunlight. I hugged him. I told him I forgave him. I told him I would still come to Aubrey's birthday and still call on Sundays and still be his mother in every way that mattered. But I was still leaving. They found an apartment. It took about 3 weeks, but they found one. Renee's sister helped them with the deposit. Sylvia made arrangements to go back to Phoenix, a different apartment, this one without the mold issues. I don't know all the details. I didn't ask. The morning they moved out was a quiet one. I stood on the wraparound porch and I watched Daniel carry boxes to the truck, and I thought about him carrying boxes in the other direction 9 months ago and how certain he had seemed then that everything would work out fine. Before he left, he hugged me for a long time and he said, "I'm sorry I didn't take better care of you, Mom." I said, "You still can, just not in this house." He nodded. He wiped his eyes. He drove away. My unit at Meadow Creek faces east. In the morning, the sun comes through the screened porch, and I sit there with my coffee, and I read, or I don't read, and I listen to the birds. I put Harold's reading glasses on the windowsill next to my chair. His cardigan is on a hook by the door. His slippers are under the edge of my bed. It is a smaller space than the house on Clover Hill Road, considerably smaller, but it is only mine. Every corner of it is only mine. When I close a door or open a window or rearrange anything in the kitchen, I do it because I want to, and no one moves it back. Dorothy comes on Thursdays. We sit on the porch and drink iced tea, and she tells me things that make me laugh until I have to be careful about it. Daniel calls on Sundays. Sometimes we talk for a long time. He got a new job, a good one, better than the last. He sounds lighter than he did for most of the last year. Aubrey got on the honor roll. She called me herself to tell me. That made me very proud. Renee and I are polite. Genuinely polite, I think, not the performed kind. We'll probably never be close. That's all right. Not every relationship gets to be close. Some of them just have to be decent. As for Sylvia, I haven't spoken to her since the Sunday at the dining table. I don't have any particular feelings about that one way or the other. What I know is this. I spent 42 years building a life inside that house. I cooked thousands of meals in that kitchen. I slept in that bedroom through every season. I watched Harold read in his chair. I sat on that porch through summer heat and winter mornings and every kind of weather in between. I loved that house. I truly did. But a house stops being yours the moment the people inside it forget that you matter. And when that happened, when I stood in my own hallway holding a laundry basket, listening to someone admire the sunlight in my bedroom, I had a choice. I could have argued, I could have cried, I could have appealed and begged and made everyone uncomfortable and still ended up in that guest room staring at the neighbor's fence, or I could remember whose name was on the deed. I chose to remember. People sometimes think that when you get to my age, you become soft, that you can be moved around, that you can be managed and arranged and gently pushed out of rooms without making too much trouble about it. Maybe some women my age have learned to accept that. I married a man who said a closed bedroom door in your own home is the first sign something's gone wrong. Harold was right about most things. I spent 42 years knowing that. I wasn't going to forget it on account of someone else's throw rug in my hallway.